He remembered the sound of silence more than he remembered the sound of war. Alec Rain stood on the edge of the viewing platform aboard the desolate orbital council hub, staring down at the ruined blue shimmer of what used to be a bustling interspecies station. Flickering holograms stuttered around him, ghosts of bureaucracies, projections of vanished empires. The great banners of the Galactic Council, once vibrant and adorned with the sigils of over 300 species, hung tattered, barely responding to the artificial atmosphere's soft wind simulation. He had been here before, years ago, as a human ambassadorial attaché. A younger, hopeful version of himself had shaken tentacled hands, smiled at eyeless diplomats, and whispered with synthetic-voiced envoys in the glowing halls of diplomacy. That Alec had believed in unity, believed in the Council, believed humanity had found its rightful place among the stars. Now, he was the only human left here, perhaps the only one who cared. Status report. Alec said, his voice gravel against the cold silence. The voice that replied was smooth, feminine, and artificial. Atmospheric integrity holding. Council Hub remains in critical condition. You are advised to evacuate. Again. Noted, he murmured, already ignoring the warning. Alec's worn boots thudded softly as he walked along the curved corridor. Vines, once decorative, had grown wild after years of neglect. Nature, or whatever hybrid of engineered biota the station had used, was reclaiming its territory. Lights buzzed overhead, flickering randomly as if trying to remember how to function. In the absence of humanity, it seemed even the machines had forgotten purpose. He passed what remained of the central deliberation hall. A crater now, glass shards crunched underfoot, catching dim light like dying stars. The place where decisions had once reshaped civilizations had become an echo chamber of loss. Alec paused, crouched down, and reached into the debris. His fingers wrapped around a cracked datapad. Wiping the dust off, he tapped its screen. Nothing. Battery dead for who knew how long. Still, he slipped it into his coat pocket. Behind him, the voice returned. You know they won't listen. The council's gone. Scattered. Bickering among themselves. I'm not here to convince them, Alex said. I just want the truth. The truth. That was all that remained now. No fleet. No human diplomats. No glorious exit parade. Humanity had left the Council 71 standard years ago, not in a blaze of glory, but in a quiet walkaway. One morning, the humans simply weren't there. No declarations. No threats. No retaliatory strike. Just silence. And everything collapsed. The Corps, who relied on human logistical AI, lost half their fleet coordination in a month. The Scothy supply lines, once kept efficient by human-engineered warp fabrics, fractured, leading to famine on 3 colony moons. The Kravik Consortium, emboldened by the absence of human moral oversight, began annexing disputed systems, only to be bombarded into oblivion by a retaliatory alliance that couldn't stabilize itself after. Within 5 years, wars erupted across 9 sectors. Trade collapsed. Communications across core systems failed. Whole archives were lost. Civilizations fragmented. Old enemies resurfaced. New ones were born. And always, beneath the chaos, lingered one whispered question. Why did the humans leave? Alex stopped before a sealed blast door. He'd been working months to unlock this level. Not with brute force, but patience, layers of code, ancient authorizations no one thought to revoke. His own clearance had been inactive for decades. Yet, some systems still recognized his voice. Voice authorization. Rain, Alec. Code 38, Fox 801. A pause, then a groan of machinery, ancient and reluctant, as the blast door cracked open with a hiss of escaping air. Beyond lay Archive Theta, an off-grid database meant for emergencies. Untouched since the schism. Alex stepped inside, boots echoing on the obsidian tiles. Dozens of stasis-locked hollow cores blinked alive at his presence. He approached the central console and placed his hand on the scanner. It pulsed red, then green. Welcome, Alec Rain. Archive Theta access granted. Retrieval protocols initialized. Holograms flickered to life around him. Thousands of documents, logs, visual recordings, classified dossiers that had been erased from the main council networks. His eyes scanned the index until a name caught his attention. Project Harbinger, Human Contingency Directive 0. He tapped it. A projection appeared. A human general, cold-eyed, white-haired, a ghost from humanity's war division, General Ezia Halvers. This is Directive 0. Her recorded voice began, low and calm. If you're seeing this, the council has failed. We gave them the blueprints to peace. They chose power. We gave them empathy. They chose compliance. We offered partnership. They demanded subservience. She leaned forward in the recording, her voice sharpening. And so humanity walks away. We do not flee. We do not abandon. We evacuate the field so that the players may see their game collapse. We will not be weapons. We will not be pawns. The image shimmered. Do not follow us. Do not call for us. Not until you understand why we left. Then static. Alec's hand trembled. He turned to the AI voice, still softly humming in the chamber. Have you logged any inbound pings from council fragments in the last cycle? One, it replied. From a surviving Telnari envoy ship. Encrypted. Sent 2 weeks ago. Play it. The voice that came through was trembling. Telnari had no vocal cords, but the synth translation still somehow conveyed desperation. To any human frequency, please respond. We don't know how to fix it. Systems are breaking down. Worlds are dying. You were right. Please, if anyone's still listening, we need you. Alec exhaled. He looked again at the image of General Halvers. Don't follow us, she'd said. But now they were calling. And maybe it was time someone answered. As Alec stood there, debating between loyalty and abandonment, he didn't notice the faint flicker in the lights behind him, or the quiet shifting of air in a previously dormant ventilation duct, or the red-eyed Sentinel drone that activated an Archive Theta's upper scaffolding, its orders hard-coded from a time when humans were still seated at the table of stars. It watched him, scanned his face, sent a silent signal. Human contact confirmed. Deep in a forgotten part of the station, buried behind encrypted walls of black ops data and ghosted frequencies, something ancient stirred. Something human. The ship that arrived 3 days later wasn't a council vessel. It was barely holding together. Alec watched from the cracked observatory deck as the Telnari envoy vessel shuddered through the remains of the orbital debris ring, its hull scorched and pockmarked. Even from this distance, he could see power fluctuations rippling across the ship's energy signature. They hadn't come in strength. They'd come in desperation. He didn't blame them. The AI voice echoed in his ear. Docking request received. Craft identifies as TSC Serapha's wound. Diplomatic clearance attached. Crew count, 3. Life signs, unstable. Allow docking, Alex said. Route them to Bay 9. Prepare medical support. What we can offer. He stood and adjusted his jacket, running a hand over the fraying edge of his collar. He hadn't worn insignia in years. Not since the Great Silence. But something about today tugged at old habits. By the time he reached Bay 9, the outer hatch had just cycled open. A blast of sterilization mist vented into the corridor, followed by the hissing groan of metal. The Telnari stepped out first. She was tall, insectoid, with a deep amber carapace cracked along her left thorax. One of her mandibles twitched, either from pain or nervousness. Behind her came a smaller Telnari male, limping, his arm wrapped in what looked like improvised human cloth. The third was not Telnari at all. A Krithan. Now, that was unexpected. The Krithan were prideful, feline, reptilian creatures. They had never liked humans, thought them too emotional, too reckless. But the Krithan envoy, a grayscaled female with dignified posture and a swollen eye, said nothing as she entered the station. Her gaze locked with Alex. There was recognition there. Regret, maybe. You are Rain? The lead Telnari asked, her translator sputtering. The last of your delegation? Alec nodded. I'm just Alec now. No delegation. No titles. Just someone who didn't leave with the others. The Krithan stepped forward. Then you are our last hope. It sounded melodramatic, and Alec almost rolled his eyes, but the weight in her voice was real. Let's get you stabilized first, he said. Then we talk. He escorted them to the med bay. The station's facilities were cobbled together, but humanity never did anything halfway. The autonomous med bots scanned, diagnosed, and administered treatment while Alec leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching the three of them whisper to each other in their respective tongues. The Telnari female finally spoke. I am Counselor Travick of the Corps 6, or what remains of it. This is Technician Solva. The Krithan is former Admiral Nessarital. We represent different species, different houses, but we all came for one reason. Alex said nothing. Please, Travick continued, mandibles clicking softly. We need humanity's guidance. The balance is gone. Trade networks have shattered. The Niru are raiding border worlds. The Arcoan have declared unilateral sovereignty over 16 neutral systems. There is no order. The peace you helped build, it's dying. Admiral Nessari stepped forward. Your withdrawal, it wasn't a protest. It was a test. Alec raised an eyebrow. A test. She nodded slowly. To see what the galaxy would become without you. He didn't correct her. It was more complicated than that. The Directive Zero wasn't a test. It was a final straw. But maybe, to the ones left behind, it felt like humanity had disappeared just to watch the galaxy burn. Alex sighed. And now you want us to fix it? No, Travick said. We want to understand. We want you to show us how to fix it. Not with ships, not with weapons, but with what you left behind. That was the real reason, wasn't it? Not to beg for troops, but to understand the frameworks, legal, diplomatic, algorithmic, that humans had installed to keep the council running. Most species had adopted human-made systems without understanding them. Now, without human stewardship, those systems were unraveling. I don't have access to Earth, Alex said, or Mars or Luna Command. Humanity severed ties completely. I'm just a remnant. But you were one of the architects of the Stability Protocol, Nessari said. You helped design the Central Resolution Matrix. You know how it works. Alex's expression darkened. Yes, I know how it works. I also know how easy it is to corrupt if you remove the human element. Travick bowed her head. Then teach us. Help us rebuild what you left behind. He didn't answer. Not immediately. Instead, he gestured for them to follow. He led them back toward Archive Theta. Along the way, they passed crumbling halls filled with decaying memory plaques, with statues of beings long dead. There were murals painted by humans and non-humans alike, capturing moments of supposed unity, now cracked, faded, forgotten. Why did you leave? Nessari asked softly. Truly, Alex stopped at the threshold of the archive and turned. You really want to know? They nodded. It wasn't one thing. It was 1,000 small betrayals. We asked for transparency, and the council buried truths. We asked for equitable trade, and they gave us exploitation masked by treaties. We asked for respect, and they treated us like tools. Not allies, not equals, just tools. He paused. Then they asked us to silence dissent in our own species, to sacrifice freedom for the appearance of harmony. That was the line. So we left, not with violence, just absence. The three aliens looked away, shame twisting their expressions in subtle ways. Alex stepped into the archive, the door sealed behind them. He walked to the center console again. The holo display responded to his presence, illuminating the room with faint blue light. He accessed a new file, one he hadn't opened since the day he decided to stay behind. Stability Protocol, Human Oversight Layer, Severed Node Logs. The room changed. Dozens of nodes appeared, small spheres of data connected by glowing filaments. Each represented a key system the humans had silently monitored and adjusted for equilibrium. Trade, war prevention, crisis mediation, energy redistribution, technological throttling to avoid imbalance. And now, every single one of those nodes was red. Without the oversight layer, Alex said quietly, these systems spiral into chaos. The algorithms were never meant to run indefinitely. They needed context, judgment, empathy, the human hand. Solva, the technician, looked overwhelmed. We didn't know. We thought it was automatic. That was the point, Alec replied. You were supposed to feel like you were doing it yourselves. Travick stared at the red-lit map. Can it be restarted? Alec hesitated. Yes, but not from here. He zoomed into a hidden subnode deep beneath Council space. There's a failsafe. Earth didn't fully cut the cord. They left a tether. One last key buried in a dead relay on Proxim V. If we recover it, I can restore limited human protocols, enough to stabilize the core systems. Then that's our mission, Nessari said. Before Alec could answer, the lights in the room flickered. A harsh tone echoed. Unknown signal, tracking drone activated. Alec spun toward the archive ceiling just as the red-eye drone he'd seen earlier dropped like a shadow, activating shielding and targeting protocols. He cursed. That's a Sentinel, ancient black ops guardian. It must have been triggered by our access. Protective countermeasure? Travick asked. No, Alec growled, yanking them toward cover. Judgment protocol. It was programmed to eliminate anyone trying to resurrect human control systems without proper planetary authorization. A laser pulse blasted overhead, carving a molten scar into the wall. Run! As alarms blared and systems reactivated for the first time in decades. Alec Rain knew this was no longer a diplomatic mission. It was survival and resurrection. The corridor was a blur of motion and chaos as Alec pushed the Telnari and Crithin out of the path of the Sentinel drone. The walls around them trembled with the force of each strike from the automated weapon, and the air hummed with the sharp scent of ozone. Alec's heart raced, each beat echoing like a war drum in his chest as he ran, trying to keep ahead of the drone's relentless pursuit. Keep moving, Alec barked, his voice barely audible over the high-pitched whine of the drone's engines. We can't fight it here. We need to get to the shuttle bay. They sprinted down the long corridor, the oppressive clang of the drone's thrusters growing louder as it closed in. The surveillance drone's red targeting sensors flashed in the dark, its lethal laser slicing through the air with deadly precision. Alec felt a tremor in his spine. The Sentinel wasn't just another guardian. It was an executioner. Travick, still weak from her injuries, stumbled but managed to keep pace. Solva, the technician, was faster, more agile despite his broken arm. But the real surprise was Nessari. The Crithin Admiral moved with uncanny grace, her gaze locked forward, unwavering. As they neared a junction, the lights overhead flickered again, casting long, haunting shadows across the walls. Alec had no choice but to veer sharply into a maintenance shaft, an old emergency exit that should have been sealed long ago. The shaft was narrow, winding, and claustrophobic, but it offered a brief respite from the relentless pursuit of a Sentinel. Alec slammed the access panel shut behind them. The air was thick with tension, their breaths ragged as they gathered themselves in the narrow space. Alec's fingers trembled slightly as he keyed in the security override to the emergency door. He had no idea if it would work, but he had to try. That was too close, Solva muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. You think? Alec shot back, his voice tight with frustration. The drone's still out there. If we don't get to that shuttle bay in 5 minutes, we're all dead. Travick looked around the dimly lit shaft, her mandibles clicking in agitation. What is that thing? It didn't act like a regular security drone. It's a Sentinel, part of the original human defense network, Alec said, his voice low. It's not just designed to guard. It's programmed to terminate anyone trying to access certain systems. And right now, it's targeting us. Terminate, Nessari repeated, her voice a strange mix of disbelief and fear. But why? We're not a threat. We're asking for help. Doesn't matter, Alec said grimly. That drone was designed to preserve human control at all costs. If it was activated, that means the protocol has been triggered, and we're not the only ones it's watching. A low rumble vibrated the walls, signaling that the drone was closing in again. Then we have to move, Nessari said, her sharp eyes narrowing. But I don't understand. The Council doesn't operate like this. We're allies. What happened between you and the rest of the galaxy? Alec froze. There it was, the question he had hoped they wouldn't ask. The one he had kept buried for years. The reason he had left Earth and never looked back. He had promised himself that he wouldn't relive that betrayal. But standing here, in the dark with the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders, there was no avoiding it any longer. Alec looked at the Crithan Admiral, his face hardening. "I'll tell you, but you may not like it." The maintenance shaft twisted, a labyrinth of old metal pipes and wiring snaking through the core of the station. As they ran, Alec's mind slipped back to the days before the collapse, before the Council's decision had irrevocably altered humanity's future. It had been almost 10 years since the Great Silence, the day humanity had abandoned the Galactic Council and severed all diplomatic ties. No one had seen it coming. The other species had underestimated the power of the human will, and the implications were still being felt across the galaxy. The catalyst had been the final vote on the Pyrenees Treaty. It was a bill designed to legalize the annexation of several newly discovered star systems, ones that had never been explored by any species except humanity. The vote should have been routine, a formality. But when the Council demanded that humanity surrender control of these systems to alien interests in exchange for a few additional trade privileges, the humans had refused. They had voted no, and the Council, in their arrogance, had ignored the vote. Alec had been part of the human delegation, one of the architects of the Stability Protocol. He had seen it coming. He had known that the Council would betray humanity's sovereignty. But nothing could have prepared him for the rage that boiled over when the Council's decision was final. "Human interests will never come first again," the Galactic President had said, smirking as he signed the treaty. "Humanity is now just another species, equal with the rest of us." Alec had stood up, his heart pounding in his chest. "Not just another species. We're the species that helped hold this Council together. And you want us to roll over for your greed?" It had been a mistake. His outburst, his refusal to submit to the Council's demands, had been the beginning of the end. The next day, humanity had withdrawn from the Council, not just from politics, but from every diplomatic and military agreement they had ever signed. Every system, every trade route, every alliance. Gone. The Council's response had been swift. Humanity's trade routes had been blocked. Embargoes had been placed on human goods. And every race, from the Telnari to the Crithan, had turned their backs. But the most devastating part of the decision had been the retraction of the Stability Protocol. When humans had created the framework for interspecies peace, they had done it with a hand that knew how to balance ideals with realpolitik. But when they left, they also took with them the intricate mechanisms that had kept the galaxy from falling into chaos. The protocol wasn't just a political tool. It was a delicate web of solutions and countermeasures that no one else could replicate. And now, the galaxy was on the brink of collapse. The Niru were raiding border systems. The Arcoan were preparing for war. Trade had ground to a halt. Alliances had dissolved. The very structure of the galaxy was fragmenting. Alec exhaled sharply as the distant whine of the Sentinel drone echoed through the shaft. It was closing in again. "That's why I left," Alec said, his voice harsh. "The Council's greed cost us everything, and I couldn't stand to be part of it any longer." Nessari nodded slowly. "But you're here now. You could help us rebuild, couldn't you? You've still got the knowledge. You could restore the balance." Alec's eyes burned. "I don't know if I can. That knowledge was never meant to be used like this." "Then let us help you," Travik said, her voice low but insistent. "You're not alone anymore." Alec looked up, his heart pounding. There was something in her eyes, something that made him believe she wasn't just asking him to restore the protocol. She was asking him to restore humanity's place in the galaxy. But just as he opened his mouth to speak, a distant thrum echoed through the station. A low, deep rumble that sent a chill down his spine. Something was coming. Alec turned to the others. "We need to get to that shuttle bay now." The rumble from the depths of the station reverberated through the walls, a deep, bone-shaking tremor that told them everything they feared was real. Alec's heart skipped a beat as he turned to the others. The air was thick with the metallic smell of sweat and fear. "We need to move faster," Alec said, voice urgent. The maintenance shaft they were in grew narrower, the twisting, rusted pipes overhead creaking ominously. Alec had always prided himself on his ability to think quickly under pressure, but this situation was starting to spiral beyond anything he had ever experienced. The drone was still on their tail, but now something else was in play. Something bigger. The rumble came again, louder this time. "It's too late for the shuttle bay," Nessari muttered. Her voice held a hint of steel, but there was an underlying tremor. "The entire station is locking down." Alec's gaze flicked to the others. They couldn't afford to be trapped here, not with the station collapsing into chaos and the drone hunting them like prey. He could already feel the cold prickle of dread creeping up his spine. "We're not leaving without that shuttle." The corridor ahead split into two directions. To the left, a set of thick, reinforced doors led to the main command center, but the glow of red emergency lights through the cracks in the walls warned him it was likely compromised. To the right, another corridor, one Alec knew, could lead to an emergency exit tunnel, a hidden passage that might just get them to the shuttle bay in time. The rumble came again, louder still. But this time, it wasn't just the station shaking. The very fabric of the station felt unstable. The walls reverberated with a low hum, and Alec's gut clenched. It was the sound of something enormous preparing to strike. "We don't have a choice," Alex said, turning sharply to the right. "Stay close." They raced down the narrow corridor, every footfall ringing in the tense silence that surrounded them. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, as if the station itself was bracing for the worst. With every step, Alec's pulse quickened. There was no escape from what was coming. And then, just as they rounded a corner, a sharp, mechanical voice blasted through the station's intercom. "Security breach detected. Containment protocol initiated. Immediate lockdown in all sectors. All ships and personnel will be detained." Alec's blood ran cold. "No!" Solva yelled, his voice cracking. "That's it. They've triggered the station's self-destruct." Alec's mind raced, but the only thing that came through clearly was one terrifying fact. They were running out of time. The station had sealed every exit. The drones were already sweeping the hallways. They were trapped, surrounded on all sides by enemies, and there was no way out. But then, as if on cue, Alec felt the faintest rumble underfoot, different from the earlier tremors. The sound was soft at first, barely noticeable. Then it grew a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the very walls of the station. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't the sound of a failing system. It was a power surge. Alec's eyes widened as realization hit him like a slap to the face. "No." "What?" Travik hissed, confused. "It's not the station." Alec's voice dropped to a whisper. "It's them." And then, the air seemed to crackle as the walls around them buckled. There was a sharp screech of metal, followed by a series of explosions that sent tremors through the corridor. The emergency lights flickered and went out completely, plunging them into darkness. The station groaned, its life support systems shuddering as the power grid strained. "Humanity has initiated the system override." The mechanical voice was cold, but there was a slight distortion in its tone. "All non-human entities are to stand down." Alec's heart slammed against his chest. "It's us. The override is human. We triggered it when we left the council. It's been dormant, waiting." The station was no longer just a neutral territory. It had become a battlefield. The very infrastructure that had once been humanity's shield was now a weapon, a tool for a new kind of rebellion. "What?" Solva breathed, staring at Alec in horror. "Why would the station have this protocol? We don't even have full control over the technology." Alec didn't answer immediately. His mind was spinning, trying to process the staggering turn of events. For years, he had assumed the galaxy had moved beyond humanity's reach, that they had lost their power when they abandoned the council. But here, in the heart of a dying station, the truth was revealed. Humanity's influence hadn't diminished. It had been buried. The power surge wasn't just the station coming online. It was the culmination of centuries of humanity's control over intergalactic security and defense systems. They had constructed the galaxy's surveillance grid, its battle protocols, its emergency response systems. They had built it for the greater good, but when they had walked away from the council, they had left it dormant, waiting. And now, it was alive again. The emergency lights flickered back on, casting their pale, sickly glow over the corridor. Alec turned to look at the others. They had no choice but to move, to get to the shuttle bay before they were locked out entirely. But now, it wasn't just a matter of escaping. They had to find out why the override was triggered and who had triggered it. Alec's gaze hardened. Get ready. We're not leaving empty-handed. The rumbling came again, louder than before. It wasn't the station's self-destruct. It was the warships now assembling outside, locked into position by humanity's emergency defense network. Warning. External fleet detected. Humanity's directive has been activated. All ships in the system are under human command. The voice echoed through the walls, sharp and clear. They're coming for us, Nessari whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. Yes. Alec's mouth went dry, and we're about to find out who's really in control. The control chamber loomed ahead, its sealed blast doors trembling from the pressure of the station's internal conflict. System fighting system, logic crashing into protocol. Alec raced forward, accessing the control panel embedded into the wall beside the door. His fingers flew across the interface, entering override codes from memory. I thought you said this place was locked down, Travik said, clutching a plasma rifle. It is, Alec growled, but we build in redundancies just in case. Humanity always did prepare for every outcome, even betrayal. A sharp hiss. The doors peeled open, the chamber beyond lit with flickering blue and white light. The room was alive with activity, screens cascading down from the ceiling, each displaying a different sector of the galaxy. Dozens of warships now hung outside the station in a perfect grid, glowing with the ancient signature of Terran Aegis-class AI control ships. They were old, but still active, still waiting. In the center of the room was the core, a glowing sphere of entwined human code and alien infrastructure. It pulsed with rhythmic light, breathing like a heart. What is this? Nessari whispered. The Human Legacy Directive, Alec answered. We thought it was a myth. A contingency program stored deep inside galactic command stations tied to ancient Earth code. It was designed to activate if the galaxy fell into instability after humanity's withdrawal from the Council. Travik looked stunned. You mean to tell me this entire station is now under your control? Not mine, Alec corrected. Ours. Humanity's. It always was. He approached the console and placed his hand on a biometric scanner. The surface glowed red, then white. A voice spoke. Familiar. Human. Commander Alec Rourke. Welcome home. Status. Humanity in absentia. Reasserting emergency protocols. Directive Alpha 9 activated. Do you wish to assume full control? Everyone froze. The silence was suffocating. Assume control. With those words, Alec felt the entire weight of human history bearing down on him. This was more than just survival. It was reclamation. The galaxy was spiraling into chaos, and this relic was a chance to stop it or end it. But as Alec looked at the others, Nessari, whose people once feared humans, Solva, a former council enforcer who had turned away from bureaucracy, even Travik, who still carried resentment for what the old Earth wars had done to his system, he understood something else. This wasn't just about humans anymore. Override the directive, Alec said. Remove single-species command. Reinstate interspecies coalition governance under the human directive framework. The computer paused. For one agonizing moment, the lights dimmed. Then acknowledged. Multi-species directive recognized. Establishing coalition echo. Human core retained for stability. Full command will be distributed upon election. Legacy archives unlocked. Stand by for upload. What did you just do? Solva asked, breathless. I gave it back, Alec whispered. I gave the galaxy a chance. Suddenly, the station surged to life. The screens expanded. Across every sector, ships powered by humanity's forgotten technology stirred. Some rose from long-abandoned hangars on desert moons. Others emerged from shadow-cloaked ruins orbiting dead suns. The directive was alive, broadcasting stability protocols, disarming rogue council ships, and reactivating peacekeeping AIs. But not all would welcome it. Incoming fleet, Nessari said, her voice grim. Council remnants. 72 ships. armed. They know we activated the core. Alex stared at the screen. The Council would never surrender authority without a fight. But the war they were about to face was one they themselves had sparked, by growing too drunk on power after humanity left, by thinking order could exist without balance. Then we show them the truth, Alex said. Prepare the station's defenses. Bring the old satellites online. Redirect the legacy ships to non-lethal containment patterns. Solva blinked. You're not going to destroy them? No, Alex said. We're going to humiliate them. The system pulsed with energy. One by one, the AI-controlled ships formed a defense net around the station. Shield generators activated, encasing the entire facility in a protective lattice of blue light. On the outer perimeter, satellites began transmitting loud, inescapable messages to the approaching fleet. You are entering sovereign neutral space. This facility is under coalition echo protection. Stand down or face containment. But the Council fleet didn't slow. They charged in fury, unleashing plasma torpedoes and arc beam lances. The first salvo struck, but never hit. The station's shields flared, absorbing the attacks without falter. The return strike was non-lethal, a focused EMP pulse that disabled 3 lead ships instantly. In less than 30 seconds, half the Council fleet had been disabled or forced into retreat maneuvers. They were technologically superior to most galactic factions, but not to humanity's oldest machines awakened. And still, Alec did not order a lethal strike. We give them one chance to surrender, he said, fingers poised over the interface. Broadcast this. The comms pulsed with Alec's voice, amplified across the stars. This is Commander Alec Rourke. Humanity may have abandoned the Council, but we did not abandon the galaxy. You let power blind you. You let corruption fester. But now, the systems we built, systems you co-opted, are free again. This is your only warning. Lay down your weapons, or be locked out of your own future. The words hung in silence for a heartbeat. And then, one by one, ships began powering down. A wave of surrender cascaded across the fleet. Some captains sent panic transmissions. Others pleaded for negotiation. The arrogant sneers of old Council elites had faded, replaced by fear and uncertainty. They had forgotten the weight of humanity's legacy. But the galaxy remembered. Nessari stepped beside Alec as the core dimmed slightly, shifting from war mode to stabilization. So what now? She asked. We rebuild, Alec said. This time without gods, without empires, just people, aliens, anyone who wants to build something better. Solva grinned, despite himself. You think that's possible? Alec looked at the glowing sphere, the heart of forgotten humanity, and smiled. It was always possible. They just needed a reminder. The war was over before most of the galaxy realized it had begun. The Council's remnants fractured. Worlds once bound by fear of punishment awakened to the reality that no one sat on the throne anymore. Their enforcers had been neutralized without bloodshed, by machines forged in Earth's long-forgotten past and guided by principles more ancient than the stars they now orbited. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was not ruled. It was listening. Alex stood on the balcony of the upper command tower, overlooking the now-thriving Coalition Echo headquarters on Station R9. Below him stretched vast landing decks, newly reinforced domes, and open-air communal halls where alien species mingled freely. No border checks, no tiered authority, no rigid caste structures dictating worth. Travik now coordinated defense logistics, working side by side with sentient AI cores that once guarded humanity's outer colonies. Solva, ever the cynic, had taken charge of restructuring galactic law, rewriting codes, not with conquest in mind, but consent. And Nessari, she had chosen diplomacy. The once ambassador of a dead council was now the first emissary of a new order, her voice becoming a bridge between forgotten worlds and emerging hope. She stood with Alec now, shoulder brushing his. They still ask about Earth, she said softly. Why it never returned. Why no human homeworld answers the calls. Alec exhaled, eyes distant. They don't understand yet. Earth didn't leave because it was defeated. We left because we won, because we had nothing else to prove. We gave them every tool to stand tall, and when they refused to grow, we vanished, to see if they could evolve on their own. Nessari nodded. Do you think Earth is still out there? He smiled faintly. It's not a question of if. It's a question of when it wants to be found. The new coalition expanded with stunning speed. Dozens of oppressed species began rising from centuries of council-imposed stagnation. Long silent technologies once locked behind paywalls and privilege were shared freely, distributed through the legacy directives auto-learning cores. Terraformers were deployed to dying worlds. Lost languages were decoded by dormant AI that spoke in ancient Terran dialects. A phrase began circulating among the outer systems. It started in whispers, in war zones, among scattered colonies rescued by echo fleets. No one could trace it, but it lingered. Human, don't stop. It became a chant, a symbol, not of dominance, but of defiance. Not of violence, but of will. It was etched into the hulls of rebuilt ships, carved into monuments on planets freed from tyranny. Children of alien bloodlines learned it in school as a rallying cry, a lesson in perseverance. And yet, not all were pleased. A shadow loomed. In the dark zones where legacy signals had yet to reach, a resistance brewed. Old power brokers, slavers, oligarchs, and council purists whose influence had crumbled. They gathered in lawless sectors, arming with tech stolen from ancient Terran black sites. They whispered of revenge. One transmission slipped through, intercepted by Echo scouts. It was simple. You lit the stars again. Now try to hold them. Alec read it in silence, then handed the datapad to Travik. We always knew peace wouldn't be permanent, he said. Do we strike first? No, Alec replied. We prepare, but not like before. This time we teach. We elevate. Let them see the difference. And if they still choose war. He looked out at the stars, at the slowly uncoiling spiral of civilizations finding their feet again. They won't be fighting just humans. Travik grunted. You ever think we woke something bigger than the Council? Alec didn't answer right away. He walked into the central archive chamber, the heart of the directive, and activated a restricted file. A hologram flickered into existence. A woman's face. Ageless, human, kind but unreadable. Hello, Alec, the AI said. You've passed the final gate. Directive Omega is now unlocked. He felt Nessari and Travik step up behind him, silent. You were never meant to see this unless the Council fell and humanity still did not return. This message is for a galaxy still standing and still wondering where we went. The projection of the woman leaned forward. Earth is not gone. We left because we had to. We saw the pattern repeating. Empires rising and falling, enslaving, breaking, repeating the same mistakes with more advanced toys. We knew we couldn't break that cycle by staying inside it. The woman's image shifted to a starfield, endless and moving. So we went beyond, past map space, beyond known systems, to find something new. Not just new worlds, but new ways, new ideas. If we succeed, we'll return. If we fail, this directive was always our safety net, our gift, our apology, our hope. The image faded. Travik stepped back, stunned. Nessari looked shaken. Alec just nodded, slowly. They weren't running from the galaxy, he whispered. They were running towards something the rest of us couldn't even see yet. Outside the archive room, the first interspecies council meeting was underway. Hundreds of representatives from liberated systems stood around a circular chamber, each voice heard equally. No thrones, no elevated platforms, only a circle. The future, born from a legacy of grit and grief. Alec watched from the upper platform as a young Hrescry child read the new coalition pledge aloud to the chamber, her voice trembling with purpose. We are many, but we rise as one. No star too far, no voice too small. We remember the humans, not as conquerors, but as reminders that freedom begins when we refuse to kneel. He turned to leave, but as he stepped into the corridor, the lights flickered. A new signal, a deep space ping. Faint, but unmistakably Earth origin. Nessari arrived at his side moments later, holding a pad. Her eyes were wide. It's them. He stared at the pulse. It was not a cry for help. It was not a return home. It was a summons. Coordinates. An invitation. Beyond the Orion drift, Nassari whispered. There's nothing there. Alex stared. There was nothing there, he replied. The galaxy watched as the first new human ship in generations, an experimental Echo-class hybrid, built with every known species tech, rose from the station's hangar. Alex stood at its helm, a simple name etched across its hull. Don't stop. As the ship accelerated into the void, the Coalition's beacon flared once more, shining not just as a light of peace, but a challenge to every stagnant empire, every dying ideology, every hushed whisper that dared say hope had an expiration date. And so, long after the war ended, long after the dust settled, alien historians searched for the truth. But the records were incomplete, the names lost. All that remained were whispers among the stars, of a species that never surrendered, never knelt, never stopped.